Hello, YouTube, or wherever this is going to end up. I wanted to spend a little bit of time going into sort of my work history, my own interactions with the workplace, go into kind of workplace anxiety, things that I like about work, things that I don't like about work, and hopefully ways that I think we could improve work. So basically, just my work story and my experience with being in the workplace. So, my kind of early life and my first real job, besides working at Chipotle for about 6 or 10 months, was working for Apple Care Support in college. And it was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 because I would service like the East Coast clients. And there would just be people in New York who were excited to be awake at 9 o'clock their time. And they would be asking me to help fix their iPhones and troubleshoot this and troubleshoot that. So I did that throughout college. It was about 2 years. And then when I graduated with a geography degree, which wasn't really my passion, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think I was afraid of choosing something that I was going to fail at. And that was kind of the theme that carried throughout a lot of my early years, like even in my jobs and at school. Like I just never wanted to challenge myself because I was really afraid of like failure. I didn't know what that meant. And so that kind of theme stayed constant. Even in my next job, it was just kind of like, let's just pick the easiest thing and I'm just going to kind of glide through life. And so the consequence of that was things were really, really easy and safe for me, right? I feel like I could kind of skate off all of the privilege that I had from my parents and everything that my parents gave me. Like I could just keep that, right? Like that wasn't really going anywhere, but I would never be able to be like anything more than that. And I think a lot of people in certain situations, like they're forced to stay safe. I look at like friends that I had and it's like, well, you had a kid at an early age. So like you had to kind of choose this job that was safe and secure, or like you have to take care of your sick parent. And so like you have to choose security over like being enterprising. And I didn't have any of those excuses. Like I was just afraid. I was just afraid of like of change, of new things, of whatever else that meant, right? And so I just kept sort of in life in safe mode for the longest time. I remember even after I graduated school, I was still working for Apple Care Support. And this was a big moment for me. They said like, hey, do you want to work full time? And I was like, no. Like I was not working. I had one job. I had graduated school. I had all this time on my hands. And that was like this moment for me where I was like, dude, I don't really want to engage in this. Like, I don't like this job. And I had already like mentally checked out of that job for a while. It had been about 2 years, and my soul was gone, right? Like I love that expression, like my soul was gone, but my body was still there. And that exactly encapsulated what was going on with me. I just was mentally checked out, right? And at that point, like it was too late. I wasn't really going to recover from that. So I stayed part-time at Apple for another probably 6 months to a year. And basically I was still living with my parents at that time, and essentially I found a job working for Apple in the Bay Area as a contract gig. And I didn't really have a choice. My parents were like, we want you out of the house. And there was a lot of other reasons for that, mainly because like I just wasn't religious like them. That was one of the big kind of issues with me and my parents that we were butting heads about. But it was just like I had to get out. My parents were like, you need to leave. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just go be a contractor working for Apple Maps. And so next thing I know, I'm in San Jose. I'm making like 45. I can't believe I was paid that little. It just blows my mind, right? Like I was being paid like $45,000 a year, and my rent was like $1,650. And I should have found roommates. Like I'm not asking for any pity. Like I was being silly. But it was just like, it was rough. And I kind of kept along that road for a while, But there was just a lot of stress in that job. It was not great. Apple does not treat their contractors well historically. Surprise, surprise. And so I was kind of like meandering around, and then I got an email from a recruiter who asked if I wanted to work for Samsara, which was a startup. And I said, yeah, like, let's do it. I was really skeptical at first, but I was still cruising in life, right? People were coming to me. I wasn't really pushing up against anything, right? Like everything that I had done was just like par for the course. And I don't know, I think about that too in life sometimes. It's like, think how often like you actually make a choice. I like honestly, like a legitimate choice that's not like just total autopilot of like everything that you've done. I can probably think like distinctly in my mind like 5 or 6 times that like I feel in my mind like I've had to weigh 2 options and I've chosen something. Like one of them was like back in community college where like somebody was like, "Hey, I have the answers to this test. Do you want to cheat?" And I said no. And that was just like, I remember that. It was like a choice that I made. And I can't forget that, right? But almost everything else, the restaurants that I go to, I don't know, even the people that you decide to date sometimes, right? Like it all feels very, very like rehearsed, and it's just you're sticking in this lane that you've had in your life. And that's how kind of things felt for me for a very, very, very long time. So with all that said, I get this new job working for Samsara in technical support. And that's kind of where I just started to have like stress and anxiety in my life. And that was mostly because of the commute. Like I was commuting maybe 2.5 hours. I have a whole nother video about the commute and how that was like killing me. But that was sort of the start, right? It was the commute. And that was really, really tough for me. And I started to develop all these symptoms. Like my stomach would be upset in the morning. I would get really, really anxious before having to go to work. And it was a 2-hour commute. Like it was killer, right? And so basically what happened to me is like I got up to a point in my life or like my career where I was like pushed so far against the back of the wall that I realized like I had to make a change. And in a lot of ways, me making a change was sort of this response to anxiety in my life because I'd always been like, oh my God, like I want to stay safe. I want to stay safe. And like, I finally was like, you know what? I don't care about that. I want to do the opposite of that. Like I was always afraid of like flipping up stones or having people say no to me, whatever, like that entire like lifestyle, right? I was like, dude, I'm just going to try and just see like what happens if I don't like let life just happen to me. Like I try to make some waves. And again, like the whole idea is like I could have just skated through and been fine and had a decent job, but I was like, I just want to see like what I could do. And at that time, like I was in therapy, I was going through a lot with my relationships. I just didn't feel okay. And I think my body knew like something was wrong. And so I just decided like I want a new job. And like what really clinched it for me is like I would be in Lyfts and Ubers and they would ask me what I did for a living. And I didn't want to say it. Like I was embarrassed. And there's nothing wrong with customer support, technical support, anything like that, right? But like for me, like again, my soul had left and my body was still there. And I was just embarrassed of like, of that role. And again, nothing to say about that role itself, but like, I just knew it was time for me to move on. And I didn't have the self-respect to actually like pull the trigger. So I decided that was like my next step. I'm going to try to get into like sales engineering, pre-sales, and just see where that takes me. So I ran headfirst into that and I failed a lot. I pretty much did nothing but fail for 6 to 8 months. And I remember like the only thing that kept me going at that time was like, dude, I'm going to have a really great story. Like when I actually get this role, like it actually meant that much to me. I was like, man, when I actually get my first role, like I'm going to look back on this. This is going to make a great story. And it was tough. Like I was getting rejected left and right for all of these jobs. I remember one day, like I went to work and I was interviewing for a couple of companies like after, and I had gotten 2 rejections in the same day essentially. And I started to cry. Like I was so done with all of that. Like I hadn't like reached rock bottom, but like I was just so exhausted. And I kind of gave up hope for a small minute. Because it seemed like everything was stacked against me. But eventually I found a job in the role that I wanted. And this was, again, 5 or 6 months of people saying, oh, like customer support. Well, why don't you join our customer support team? Or like, oh, we're looking for someone with sales experience or XYZ. I was just getting discouraged and life was trying to direct me this way. And everybody, and you'll notice this, right? Like I learned like in life, people aren't going to tell you to do new things. They're going to support you in your existing habits. So everyone was like, oh, customer support. Like, yeah, we got roles over here. Why don't you go that way, Michael? Oh, you want to do this? Like, this is what everybody else does in here. And that's impossible. You can't do that. And just like that stubbornness that I had to have just to be like, no, I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think. Like, I'm going to do this no matter what you say or think. And my own stubbornness was the only thing that really kept me. And a big part too was like the anxiety that I had every day of like knowing that I just wasn't happy with what I was doing and I just had to push forward. And finally, like I got my break and I got my first role and I knew it. I like was saying to myself, like, once I get the title, and if you're watching this video and you're like, dude, I'm never going to be a software engineer, or like, I'm never going to be in pre-sales. I'm never going to get this title or whatever. Dude, like no matter, or dudette, once you get that title, doors will open. That's all you have to do is get that title. And it was so silly to me. I was like, wait a second. So like, I'm the same Michael from before I got this new title and after, right? Nothing has really, really changed. The only thing that's changed is some company has said, I will take a chance on you and give you this title. And once you have that new title, it's like magic, dude. It's anyone you see is like, oh yeah, you're a sales engineer. You have that one title. And most people are too lazy to look past that, right? All they see is the title and that's all they want to see. And anything beyond that is just too much for them. So once I got that first title, then everything kept rolling in. I was at that job for over a year. And then COVID happened, which is a whole nother nightmare. But at that point, no one ever thought I was going to be customer support again. Nobody else ever referred me for that role ever again. And it was just getting over that hump, which seems silly. And I tell people who I talk to about pre-sales all the time, people will ask me like, hey, like this is really hard for my first role. And I'm just like, don't worry. All the hard work, the hardest work, at least for me, was that first step. Especially if you have a non-traditional role, right? If you don't have like a computer science background, that's going to be the hardest step. So I want to offer that. And also in this video, like I also want to offer, and I've said this on LinkedIn as well, and everywhere else I'm posting, like if you're curious about how to get into pre-sales and if I can be that person, because I know maybe you don't have the confidence, like maybe you feel really discouraged. Like I think like, dude, if I would have had somebody in my pocket who would have said like, dude, don't worry about it. Like you're going to make it. That would have been amazing. And so my whole philosophy is like, once I've achieved something, I want to help other people achieve that. So if you have anything, or if you have any interest in pre-sales, or maybe you're in customer support, you want to move up or move to the side or move anywhere, right? Or you're, a new student in computer science, or you have a non-traditional background like me, like geography, feel free to reach out to me on YouTube. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to chat with you, have a phone call. I do resume writing. I've been doing that for about 2 or 3 years. So yeah, that's my story. So I hope that's of value to you, but I also want to give you value by offering, if you have any questions, you want to chat with me like a Zoom call or whatever, I'm totally happy to do that. I just ask that like, if I do help you and you get to a point where you're happier in your career, that you just do the same thing for other people. So I hope this is of value to you. Please let me know if you'd like to talk. You can chat with me in the comments. But if not, I will talk to y'all soon. Thanks.